This is the Liberty Blue Rangers Podcast. With Andrew Chelby and Nick Zararis.
Rangers fans, welcome to the best Rangers podcast in town. I am Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis, and we are Liberty Blue. We scream about the Rangers so that you can save your voice. That's how deeply we care about you. We appreciate that you've joined us for the ride. This is episode 21, live on Twitch, recorded just a couple of hours before we normally do, so we're not quote-unquote live, but we're doing this around 3 p.m. Eastern. We normally go live around 6, so we're not live, but we might as well be. We will put the full video up on our YouTube, Liberty Blue Podcast, and the full audio version will be available as an audio podcast as well. Search Liberty Blue on your favorite podcast platform, and it should be there. Give the show that shiny and illustrious 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. It helps the show more than you think it does, more than you can imagine it does. It really, really helps the show grow. At Liberty Blue Pod on Twitter and Instagram, I am at Chelney Andrew, Chelney Andrew, and that is Nick Zararis, Nick Zararis are our personal handles to follow on Twitter as well. Nick, after the Rangers game last night, I texted you and said I was ready to yell. Are you there yet, or is it too early for you?
Yell, no. Be frustrated, like that cliche thing your parents would say to you. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. That kind of energy right now is what I have with the Rangers, because you can see what the problems are. These are the same problems this team has had for years now in terms of offense, where if the offense isn't coming to them easily, they're not particularly good at the grinded out type of game where they're going to have to win a lot of loose pucks and generate stuff from below the goal line. So when the offense dries up, you get into these kinds of games where it feels like the puck is never going to go in. You feel overly reliant on your power play, your goalie, and your defense. And that's especially problematic in a game like yesterday where you don't have Lindgren, where you have Hayek in there, where you have Zach Jones, who clearly doesn't have Gallant's trust in there, and you end up with Adam Fox playing 29 minutes in a game in November, which is problematic for a variety of reasons. But I would just say I'm disappointed and frustrated right now. I'm not like overtly angry because there's not really anything they can do other than just play better. That's it. There's no help coming. They don't have the cap space right now to bring in external help. This is the team, more or less. They're going to figure it out, or this is going to be a very long season.
One of the biggest things that I brought this up to you in text, and I bring this up in tweets as well. Mika Zibanejad through 13 games this season has 0 5-on-5 goals. This is your first line center, and if he's not shooting one times on the power play when the cross seam pass works and he just gets the puck clean on his stick and he shoots it and the goalie has no chance, he's not scoring anything, and that was a problem last year. And it's continuing to be a problem this year of when the Rangers right now, their offense is living and dying by their own power play. They have been playing better at 5-on-5. That's not to say that they haven't been. They are controlling the pace more. They are having the pucks on their stick more, but ultimately it's still not leading to more goals at even strength. So when you have a guy like Mika Zibanejad who can put up a lot of points, but right now, and also last season as well, if he's not on the power play, my guy's not doing anything offensively. And that's a huge problem for me that I have when I watch him play. He is too good to be kind of putting himself in this box of, if I'm on the power play, I'm dominant. If it's 5-on-5, I can't score anything. And I don't know how to fix that. I don't know how the Rangers and Mika Zibanejad have to go about changing that aspect of his game. But if it's 5-on-5 and Zibanejad's on the ice, I kind of am not even thinking that he's going to score because he just doesn't do it.
So the first thing I'll say is this has been a problem for years now that the Rangers can't score at 5-on-5. They've gotten into this box where they're used to just trying to hang on for dear life at 5-on-5, rely on the goalie to be the difference in most nights, and then have their power play make up the gap, fill in that space that they don't have at 5-on-5. And one of the things, then this has been a problem for years, is The type of offense they run is predicated off of going from defense to offense quickly and getting a zone entry quickly and cleanly and generating a scoring chance pretty soon after getting into the offensive zone. When they play teams that are very well structured defensively, those passes to set up those cross seam passes on the rush when they gain zone entries, it's not there. You saw Detroit kind of take that away. Against the Flyers, that was there, but they just couldn't hit the net to save their life, and Carter Hart was very good. And then against Boston, Boston's a very well-structured team defensively. It's a little bit different now that they have Jim Montgomery as opposed to Bruce Cassidy. Their defense is a little bit more active and involved in getting up into offense. But against teams that are structured, we talked about this in relation to the Islanders 2 weeks ago, where the Islanders have always given the Rangers a hard time because that cross-seam pass is not there in front of the net, which means the Rangers have to go to secondary types of offense, which is winning puck battles, which they don't have the personnel to win a lot of puck battles. I mean, we saw this last year in particularly where they dumped the puck in the 8th or 9th most in the entire league, and they were 30th in puck retrievals, which tells you what kind of personnel they have. And still, that nobody on this team is elite at going to get loose pucks. They don't have an Andrew Mangiapane type. They don't have somebody who can go below the goal line against somebody bigger than them, win loose pucks, and keep the cycle going. Until they do that, they're going to continue having these. I mean, last night against Detroit, it kind of reached a laughable point where they were just firing shots from 40 feet away that had no chance of going in because they were so kind of out of it and demoralized, more or less, where they were hanging on for dear life against the Detroit team that's not particularly good, even though they have a good record at the moment. It's just very frustrating because these are all the kinds of things that long range that we talked about the entire summer, that I've been writing about for the better part of 3 years now, that you can like these guys. Mika Zibanejad's a really good hockey player. Chris Kreider's a really good hockey player. But unless you acknowledge the flaws of their games, you're going to have holes in your team build, which is what the Rangers have right now. This team is entirely reliant on the first and second line to score all their goals. Right now, the way the third and fourth lines are going, you'd be lucky to get 15 out of them combined, 15 goals total between the third and fourth lines. So when the top six isn't scoring, there are no goals.
If I told you that Dryden Hunt has more even strength goals as a Ranger than Mika Zibanejad, would you believe me? Because the answer is yes. Dryden Hunt in 3 games had 1 goal. He scored that goal at even strength. Mika Zibanejad in 13 games has 0 even strength goals. And that just goes to the point of this team lives and dies by the power play. On the power play, Mika Zibanejad is scoring a lot of points and a lot of goals, and so is Panarin and all these people. But at 5-on-5, when everybody is on the ice and there's not a whole lot of space, that line right now is not generating enough offense to be dangerous. And that's a really big concern if you're Gerard Gallant, if you're Chris Drury, or if you're a fan of this team. Like, if the other team takes a penalty and Mika Zibanejad gets that cross seam pass and he can shoot, and he's so dangerous. And yet when there's another player of the other team's, on the other team that's on the ice and it's 5-on-5, for whatever reason, like I said, I at this point, like, I'm not even thinking that he's going to score anymore, because we had the same issue last season as well of Mika Zibanejad is so good on the power play, is so dominant, but at 5-on-5, for whatever reason, my guy just can't score. He can't do it. And when you're making that kind of money and you have that kind of ice time and you have these kinds of teammates on your line on the ice at the same time as you, that is simply inexcusable. And we have to point these out because it's not a pleasant thing to talk about. I would love for Mika Zibanejad to have 15 even strength goals and for him to be on top of the world. But we have to be honest with what's going on the ice. And right now, Zibanejad has been very disappointing if he's not on the power play. He's just not doing enough, and the Rangers' offense is drying up as a result. When you have Zibanejad, when you have Panarin, when you have Kreider, if that's your 3 on the ice, you have to get something done at 5-on-5 eventually. And right now, through 13 games, that hasn't happened, and that's a big red flag for me.
Oh, no, it's very concerning because part of it is just bad luck, and I expect the shooting percentage to get better with time. I was looking at it today on Evolving Wild. If you look at the shooting percentage by game average, it's been on a steady decline since the start of the season, and it hasn't started to bend the other way back towards the league average yet. The save percentage has, which, as Igor gets into a rhythm, I'm not as worried about the goaltending, even though that also has been a small issue to start the season at least. The offense is generating okay looks. It's just that because there's no secondary scoring, the absence of scoring in the top six feels as egregious as it does, especially because these guys are good. I mean, Kreider had 50-something last year. Zibanejad had a career high in points. Panarin had a career high in points. I think we're going to end up having to rejigger those top lines. I realistically, I don't think Trocheck and Panarin is working the way they intended it to. I would be inclined to try Zibanejad with Panarin and Trocheck with Kreider, just for the sake of trying something different. I know at practice today, as we're recording this, they had Hedel on the second line with Panarin, which I'm a little intrigued to see what that would look like going forward. But right now, they got to figure out something to get offense going. And even if it's only for a couple games, they got to figure something out, because they're not going to win a lot of games only scoring 2 goals a game. They're just not. This is the most offensive oriented the NHL has ever been, and it's only going to keep skewing towards teams with offense. To build a team that's consciously around goaltending and 2 lines, it kind of seems like you're building a team for 5 or 6 years ago.
You mentioned secondary offense. Let me tell you another frightening statistic that is currently true about this New York Rangers team as of Monday, November 7, 2022. Sammy Blais has the same amount of shots on goal as Ryan Carpenter with 8. So Sammy Blais, who, the touted player that the Rangers got in the Pavel Buchnevich trade, along with what I believe it was a second-round pick. The trade was a disaster from the beginning, and I don't want to go back and re-talk about how terrible that trade was, because we all know it was atrocious and all these things. And Ryan and Sammy Blais, at least from defenders, are just like, well, he hits. Okay, well, the Rangers can't score right now, and my guy has 0 goals and 8 shots through 10 games that he's played, and he's got 2 assists. Where is the secondary offense going to come from? Because when you take a look at this roster and you go, is Jimmy Vesey going to score a lot of goals? The answer is no. Is Julian Gauthier going to score a lot of goals for you? I mean, he has that one move, and if he can't score on that move, he's not going to score for you. Filipino's been injured. Barclay Goodrow has also done not a whole lot offensively. He's got 2 goals, which is more than I could say about Sammy Blais, but Barclay Goodrow is getting paid a lot of money to do nothing offensively as well. So where is that secondary offense going to come from? Like you need, and Lafreniere and guys like Kaapo Kakko have been playing very well. Kakko has been playing amazingly. We'll get to him a little bit later on. Like he's been playing very well. I think his numbers will rise sooner rather than later, because the way he's been playing, he's had a couple of unlucky breaks, a couple of posts, a couple of just amazing saves. The numbers for him and Lafreniere will continue to increase as the season goes on. So I'm not too worried about them. But with guys like Sammy Blais and Barclay Goodrow are you really, like, you need more? Sammy Blais it's November 7th. Come on, score a goal. Like the Rangers need you to provide some kind of offense, and he's got nothing. So, where is the secondary offense going to come from if not from Blais and those guys? Like, there needs to be somebody that can step up and score for you. Right now, the Rangers don't have that guy.
Okay, so coming into this season, you and I talked a lot about the way that they have constructed this roster. Is that it was a doubling down of the team they had last season by only swapping out Trocheck for Strome and saying, okay, we're fine with Schneider, and then either Hayek and Jones as the third pair, and more or less just running back the same group, bringing in Ryan Carpenter as a replacement for Mott. But the problem here is, in doubling down on the team construct last year, it operated under the assumption they were still going to be able to score the same volume of goals that they did when they had Frank Vetrano and when they had Andrew Kopp. They very much do not have Frank Vetrano and Andrew Kopp right now. And this speaks to a redundancy in skill set, where they have a lot of guys who are great at facilitating, a lot of guys who are very good at playmaking. They don't have any raw finishers. There is not somebody on this team who's going to pot 25 to 30 goals relying on their shot just being that good. You might get that out of Zibanejad if he gets a good hot on the power play and Kreider gets his deflections going, but they do not have a lot of raw finishing talent on this team. I mean, it's been the biggest issue for years now that they do not finish the scoring chances they generate, and it all builds off of each other. For years, we've complained about them at 5-on-5 not generating enough offense and being too picky at offense. Well, you were able to get by being extremely picky on offense when you finished those few scoring chances you did generate because they were so high quality. Now they're being a little less selective. They're going for volume a little bit more, and they're not finishing the large amount of shots they're making. They're not making as dangerous of chances as they had in the past when they were going right. So it's all kind of snowballing for them offensively, where now it's a little bit desperate. Now you've got the coach putting Chris Kreider on the fourth line. I don't know if you saw the clip or not of Gallant after practice today, where he was more or less like, yeah, he deserved to be on the fourth line. We need our leaders to play better. And Gallant did that with Kreider specifically because he knows Kreider will take it the right way. And it's a kick in the ass kind of thing where, hey, let's go. We need something out of you. And I know if I push you a little bit, you've responded to this well in the past. That's really all they can do is the psychological stuff and put the lines in a blender, because those are the only options.
The Rangers need something here, and they need it soon. And also to mention really quickly, like Ryan Lindgren was hurt. It would, it would have been great to see not Lieber Hayek. And who am I thinking of? He's wearing a Dallas Stars jersey currently, and the Rangers traded him away for a first round pick and a fourth round pick. Oh yeah, that's right. Nils Lundqvist, the guy who is offensively gifted and could have done more things for the Rangers that doesn't involve shooting and missing by 8 feet, which is what Jacob Trouba does every game. Oh, that's right. Yeah, the Rangers are doubling down on Jacob Trouba being good at hockey, and the more I watch him play, I'm really yeah. I mean, he's out there. He's definitely a player on the New York Rangers. Like, his defense is sometimes good and sometimes abysmal. His offense, which was touted in Winnipeg, as soon as he got here, kind of just disappeared. And even in his first season, like, he was still shooting the puck and actually hitting the net every now and again. For whatever reason, Jacob Trouba can't hit the net anymore. He looks a lot like Jack Johnson in that regard of, like, he will just shoot from anywhere and miss the net always. No matter where he is, Jacob Trouba will just miss the net. Either that or the puck goes directly into the goalie's logo. Like, those are the two options. And I don't know what causes that. I don't know how to fix that kind of thing. Maybe it's a mental game. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe Jacob Trouba needs to practice shooting the puck more. I don't know what's going on. But, like, Jacob Trouba needs to hit the goddamn net. I mean, dude, like, you're making you have the cap, like, it'd be one thing if Jacob Trouba was like the 60 or somebody that's not expected to perform at a high level every single night. My guy's making $8 million a year. He's got the C on his jersey. You need to do more, bro. Like, ultimately, he needs to do more offensively. He needs to be more reliable defensively, because right now he's getting paid a lot of money to just kind of do his cardio out there on the ice. And it's another one of those frustrating examples of, like, if I would so much rather be happy and it's all rainbows and sunshine with Jacob Trouba and Mika Zibanejad. Like, I would much rather be happy about this team than not. But right now, it's so frustrating when given how how badly some players are underperforming given the expectations that they've set for themselves, their contracts have set for them, and it's overall a very just an experience that I wish I could get rid of like, if Jacob Trouba was playing well defensively and scoring, I wouldn't be talking about it. I might be saying, oh, Jacob Trouba is playing so great. Like, he's not the problem, somebody else is. But right now, he's one of the biggest problems only because of his role, his stature on the team, and how poorly he's played in comparison.
So there's a few things I want to touch on here, because you raised a few good points and you made me think of something while you were talking. So number one, the biggest thing with my biggest gripe with the way Drury and Gallant have operated for the last 2 years is they treat us like we're stupid a lot of the time. They are very much, we're authority. We know what we're doing. We don't have to explain ourselves to you. That's one way of approaching it. I've always opted for, if you can explain your decisions, even if you don't get the intended results you want. If you at least make a well thought out argument for why you came to that decision, that's a little bit more justifiable, because the way they've operated, it comes off as arrogant. And when things go wrong, like they kind of are at the moment, they just kind of look like jackasses, more or less. There's no other way to put it. Like, they thought the biggest problem for the Rangers after the 56 game season was they didn't hit anybody enough, and they didn't have mental fortitude. So they went in and brought in 3 guys who, none of them were good last year at hockey in the slightest bit. They were just here. And they've doubled down on that by swapping out Strome for Trocheck, who hasn't played poorly, but hasn't played as well as I thought Trocheck would with Panarin. And the big thing here is, and you touched on it talking about expectations. Last year, it was fun. It was nice to have a Rangers team that exceeded what everybody thought they would do. They were able to ride a power play and a hot goalie for an entire season, which most teams don't have the good fortune of doing. Now you're expected to be good, and it will get more difficult with higher expectations, because people are going to be dissatisfied and are going to call you out on things when there are expectations. It's like when you release but it's like kind of like when they would make an R-rated comedy, it would do really well. And then they'd be like, oh, there's enough of demand, let's make a sequel. That's how you get Caddyshack 2. That's how you get The Hangover 2. Movies that exist. They're movies. They're not good, but they exist. And right now, the Rangers are just existing. They're not playing particularly good hockey. They're in a lot of these games because of their talent, but the talent alone isn't good enough. They are not the Avalanche who are going to be able to survive with bottom of the league scoring. I wrote it down. The Rangers are 29th in shooting percentage. Colorado's 30th. Colorado has a lot more talent than the Rangers and will be able to get by with the 30th best shooting percentage at 5-on-5 in the league. Right now, it feels like 3 goals is about the ceiling for what the Rangers can do most nights, which just isn't going to cut it.
For the New York Rangers to succeed, they have to start scoring at all levels of their roster. It can't just be the Mika Zibanejad on the power play show. This has to be Jimmy Vesey on the 4th line putting in a greaser when the Rangers need a goal. This has to be Sammy Blais wakes up from whatever trance he's in and figures out how to play hockey in the offensive zone and starts figuring out, hey, maybe I need to shoot the puck every now and again. Maybe it'll go in the back of the net. Like, Rangers need to do this, because one of the counter arguments is that, it's just November, it's not a big deal, it's not this, it's not that. Okay. As we've talked about for weeks now, it is so much easier to swallow a loss in February and in March when you don't need to win, as opposed to now. If you keep losing now and you lose a must-win game in March, it is going to really, really hurt when you think back and you think, oh, well, if we just beat the Red Wings in regulation as opposed to throwing the game and losing in overtime, we would be in such a better position. Every game counts. This is the NHL. These are the best players in the league. There's no easy games. There are no easy, we're just going to show up and win kinds of games. You have to win at every single opportunity you are given in order to stockpile as many points as you can, so that when you get to March and you get to April, you don't have to panic about every single game that you have to play. You can play your game, not have to do any kind of irrational things just to barely squeak into a playoff spot. You have that bank. You have that kind of cushion of being like, we lost this game in March, but we beat Detroit and we beat these bad teams in November, so we got that cushion in order to not have to, break our backs in order to just beat some team in March. That's why you win games early. And the reason for a lot of my frustration that the Rangers right now are throwing points away when they could be stockpiling them. These are winnable games. Even like the Boston game, the game got away from them like late, and the Bruins kind of ran away with it, and that's a loss where they didn't play that well, they didn't play too poorly, but I can accept that kind of loss in November. That's a game where Boston's a good team. These things happen. Fine, whatever. You cannot lose to the Detroit Red Wings when they've played a back-to-back, they're tired. You scored the first 2 goals of the game. You were demolishing them. And now you just let the Red Wings not only come back, you let them win the game. Like what's going? Like you can't do this in November and then just be like, oh, it's fine. Who cares? Every single point in this league matters. You have to start stockpiling them now, and throwing the points away is what's most frustrating to me watching this team. It's like this team is so clearly better, and yet they're just taking the points that are theirs, and they're saying like, we'll give them to you. Oh, we'll get them later. When is later? When is it? Because it's November, and you got to start getting the points at some point. When is that going to happen?
So one of the things in there that you said I think is interesting is about just, and I said this before when I was talking about why I'm more frustrated than angry. You saw it. They could have ran the score up in that game against Detroit yesterday. They were up 2-0 after one period. All they had to do was keep pressing. I know you're shorthanded. You don't have Lindgren, and the coach doesn't trust Zach Jones, so you really only have 4 defensemen. That's a winnable hockey game. All you had to do was not fumble it and self-implode, and they self-imploded. We saw it last year in Game 1 against the Penguins. They were up 3-0 in that game and lost in overtime because they took their foot off the gas, because they stopped playing aggressively. And it gets to the point of just where everything you're worried about starts snowballing all at once. I mean, this is a longer point discussion we can have later in the season if Zibanejad's still not scoring, but they didn't need to give him the extension they gave him. They could have played this super long game and tried to ride it out and saw what happened, but they said, we want him here. We think our group right now is pretty close. Right now, this group does not feel particularly close. Granted, it's November. We've got 2-3 weeks to American Thanksgiving, which is our traditional cutoff point. But right now, I'm starting to get a little bit worried because the East actually looks a little bit deeper than we thought it was going to be. That's to your point about games being just as valuable now as they are later. You don't want to have to worry about, oh, well, we have to play the Devils, and then we have to play the Bruins, and then we have to play this team, and then we're going out west. And when you have, right now it looks like there are going to be 9 teams fighting for the 9 to 10 teams fighting for the 8 playoff spots in the East. Last year, there were 8 teams for 8 playoff spots. This year, it looks like the Devils are actually going to be relevant, and it looks like the Islanders are going to be relevant too. The math just got a lot more difficult.
The Rangers need to win games now. And
Yes.
and the argument that I saw on Twitter was, I'm not losing sleep over a loss in November. It's fine. I'll worry about it later. I don't want to say it's a loser's mentality, but on one hand, it kind of is from the perspective of this is an 82 game season, and the points it's 2 points now. It's 2 points in April. It's the same amount of points no matter which game you play, and it's not going to get easier, as you've mentioned. And the Rangers had 2 days off. The Red Wings were on a back-to-back. The Rangers are supposedly the better team, and yet the Red Wings came in and they stole a point from this team after they were already up 2-0. Like that 1 point can really make the difference between seeding or playoff positioning or who you're going to play, or even if you make the playoffs or not. Like every single point in this league matters, no matter what point of the season you get them in. And that's why it's so frustrating to see that kind of mentality from a certain section of Rangers Twitter. And this applies to any fandom in the NHL, really, but it's so important that whenever your favorite team has the opportunity to get the full 2 points and give the other team 0 points, they should take that opportunity. They should cash in on those. And the Rangers had the opportunity. They were up 2-0. They were dominating the first period, and then all of a sudden the Rangers kind of forgot how to play hockey. They didn't want to play, or I don't know what was going on, but Detroit just took over the wheel and drove the rest of the way. All the way to an overtime win. And I want to mention, Jaro Halak had chances, had no shot on any of the goals they gave up.
Yeah.
That first one was a ridiculous tip in from out in front of the net. What is Halak supposed to do about that one? The second one, the Rangers were up on a terrible change. the Red Wings had like 4 opportunities to score there. There was nobody in front of the net to help Halak. And on the overtime goal again, like, what is he supposed to do? It's a terrible call, by the way. Terrible call. Also, Keandre Miller, what you doing? What you doing? What you doing? It's overtime. What are you doing? It's 3-on-3. Don't hold the stick. Maybe don't do that. Bad play. But like, also not the greatest of calls either. That's just kind of one of those, I don't know. But is it a penalty? Yes. Should you call it in that situation? I don't know, but it is still a penalty. And Kendrick Miller, maybe don't do that. Maybe don't, hold the stick of another player. But like, Yarrow Halak didn't have a chance on that one either. So that's one of those games, and Yarrow Halak was very frustrated at the end of that. He broke his stick on the net afterwards, and I can understand that. He played a very good game. He had multiple grade A saves. He was playing very well, and the Rangers hung him out to dry. And it's a very frustrating experience as a goalie, especially when his other games in a Rangers jersey did not go well. He was he gave up a lot of goals he shouldn't have given up. He went into this game. He looked good. He felt good, and he lost the game not because of him, but because the team in front of him did not support him at all.
He gave them a chance to win, which is all you can ever ask for, especially from your backup goalie. If your backup goalie goes out there and you have a reasonable chance to win, that's all you can ask for of them. And to your point about the sex of, and it's important to make that distinction where when the little red light goes on that says recording, we're putting the fan part of our brain aside here. We're being objective and trying to diagnose what are the real problems. And I understand there are a lot of people who don't think about sports that way. They just want to see their team do well. They want to enjoy their experience. And that's perfectly fine. How you interact with sports is your opinion. It's not being negative. It's not being optimistic. This is what we are trying to achieve here. We would like the Rangers to win a Stanley Cup before the planet can no longer freeze ice because it is not cold enough. Okay? I just want one. I don't need more than one. You give me one cup, I'm going to stop complaining. That's all I ask for is one Stanley Cup. I'm not being negative for fun here. This is taking years off of my life. All of the overtime playoff games, all of the posts, all of the waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat thinking about Rick Nash missing the net against the Kings in 2014. All of that shit is bad for my health. I could be doing so much more productive things in my life. I could be writing books. I could be president of a third world country somewhere. I could be doing something more productive. But instead, I am worrying about this goddamn hockey team because when you have those moments like last season where you have the magic of a special playoff run, you're reminded of just how much you love this and why you don't want it to ever go away. That's why we get so frustrated and why we're constantly harping on improvement, even when it seems like things are going well. Because now that things aren't going particularly great, and I don't know if you know this or not, but we're going to play the Islanders again tomorrow, and we're probably looking at Sorokin again, which not good for a team that's not scoring goals right now. So this may snowball for a few more days before they get out of this funk. And it's starting to get a little concerning. And I'm not quite panicked yet, but I'm definitely a lot less optimistic than I was a week ago.
This is a team that started off the year playing super well. We recorded when we did the episode after the first week of the season. We didn't really complain because there was not a whole lot to complain about. They looked very good at even strength. They looked like a team that was dangerous at all aspects of the game and on both ends of the ice. They look like a solid team. And then ever since that first week, it's kind of fallen apart for them, where they've kind of looked good, but they also really haven't looked good at all. There's been moments, there's been like sippets, followed by long periods of what the hell is this team doing? Like there's been flashes of, oh, this team is really good, followed by like three games of, is this the same team we just saw? Like, I don't know what's going on. Like they are essentially playing a very Jekyll and Hyde game of one period they look like they can win the Stanley Cup, and then the very next period, the same team, the same lineup, look like they can't win a board battle. I don't know how. And again, like this is one of the broader questions that maybe Chris Drury can fix later on, as opposed to Jar Gallant, or maybe hopefully Jar Gallant can fix this certainly than that. But that Jekyll and Hyde style needs to fix itself. And it needs to do it very soon, because if they don't, then the Rangers are going to limp their way, maybe potentially, into a wild card spot at this point. if they continue to play the exact same way that they have currently been playing, if they do this without fixing anything, they might limp into a wild card spot, and all hell will break loose from there. But they need to figure it out relatively soon, because if they don't, the points will continue to slip. Other teams will continue to exceed expectations, like the Devils, the Islanders, like you talked about. These are teams that they didn't fight for a playoff spot last season. These are teams that are up and coming, and they are hungry for a playoff berth, and they haven't seen playoff ice in a very long time, like the Devils, and they want nothing more than to see the Rangers fail. That's what they want to do. They will stop at nothing to see it happen. So when you give up points in such ridiculous manners that the Rangers have been doing to this point, it is very disappointing and disheartening to see, because they should be the better team a lot of times, but for some reason, and I don't know what is causing this, they just kind of are throwing points away.
They've been very inconsistent to start the season, and some of that is injury related. They didn't intend for Gaudreau to be the third line center between VZ and Gauthier. It's very good that Heedle's back. They got to find a way to keep Kravtsov healthy and in the lineup, because that was really their gamble, that they would be able to keep one of the kids with Heedle on the third line. That would provide a bulk of the secondary scoring. Whoever was on the left with them would do a modicum of defense to complement those two. And then the fourth line would be a low event, nothing happens. Right now, the entire team is low event, nothing happens, which not where you want to be when you have this much talent. And the one last thing I want to touch on this before we move on and we talk a little more specifically about each game and then look ahead towards the week coming up. Is there anything in your mind you would like to see right now that is a tangible, like we put this player with that player, or we juggle the defensive pairs, or we try and get Igor in a consistent every other game kind of routine that would assuage some of your concerns right now?
It's a really good question, and I think one of the biggest things to do, and I don't know if it's from a lines perspective, is to just have a conversation with Mika Zibanejad. Just have a sit down with him and talk to him about his 5-on-5 play, because we know that when given the opportunity to do so, because when he was an Ottawa Senator, he absolutely dumpstered the Rangers on multiple occasions at 5-on-5 on the power play. He was an all event type of high energy player. But for whatever reason, the past year plus, he has been high event on the power play and not a whole lot anywhere else. So I would have a sit down with him and figure out what is causing Mika Zibanejad to either be afraid of trying something on offense at 5-on-5, or maybe being a little hesitant when he doesn't need to be, or I don't know, like. I would talk to Mika in a one-on-one setting to kind of understand where he's coming from, because a lot of the times it feels like he's either passing the puck too much, or he's afraid to make that one extra play to get himself into a great scoring opportunity. Because when on the power play, he sets up and Panarin will throw him the puck and he shoots and he scores. That's it. When it's a 5-on-5 play and the puck is in the offensive zone, Mika Zibanejad, I don't want to say he looks lost, but like he looks like he's not looking to score. And as opposed to, hey, like, I'm Mika Zibanejad, I'm going to try and do what I can to make somebody else score. You score. You have zero goals at 5-on-5. Like that to me is one of the biggest things that need to be corrected sooner rather than later, because Mika Zibanejad is playing half the game, and most of the game is being played at 5-on-5. If your first line center is only capable of scoring on the power play, you got major issues. And the Rangers really need to talk to Mika Zibanejad and get that figured out, because if the sooner he starts scoring at 5-on-5, the better he'll be and the better the team will be. But until that happens, can't expect too much scoring out of this team.
So, two things I would say to that before we move on. Number one, do you think this is a case of kind of like late stage LeBron, where like he's actively, I'm only playing one side of the ball, where they usually have Zibanejad playing a matchup of he's against the other team's best forward and he's more inclined at 5-on-5 to be focused on defense? And then the second part of that is, do you think this is just a confidence thing, or do you just think that this is, as a player gets older, their game evolves to suit the skill set they have? And it doesn't seem like he's straight line slower or not what he was physically, but I'm just spitballing ideas here.
Well, it can't be the LeBron James idea. He can't be because he's not 38 years old and he's also not LeBron James. If this was Wayne Gretzky at 38 years old when he was doing his victory lap in New York, it'd be one thing. Like, I'm not expecting, old age Wayne Gretzky to score 1,000,000 points for the Rangers in 98 and 99 when he's clearly not the same Wayne Gretzky that he was in Edmonton. Mika Zibanejad is still in his prime, very much so. It's not like he's had career-altering injuries that have prevented him from skating a straight line a certain way, or there's nothing that's really been career-altering in terms of affecting the way he plays the sport of hockey. So I would have to assume it has something to do with his confidence, or maybe it's the way Gerard Gallant deploys him, or I don't even know, and that's one of the things that I would talk to Mika about is, if I was given the opportunity to do so, is before you were so good in all aspects, and now you seemingly are only good at one aspect when you're up a man on the power play. What happened to the player that can score at 5-on-5? That's really my biggest concern right as of right now. I mean, there's other concerns, like Jacob Trouba needs to figure out how to play defense, but with Mika specifically, when you're the first line center of a team that is playoff bound or is expected to be playoff bound, and through 13 games you have not contributed a single goal at even strength, that's gotta change really soon.
Okay, so we kind of have touched all three of the games from the last week. The overtime win against the Flyers, the Bruins kind of pulling away late at the end, and then the Red Wings game from Sunday night. It feels kind of like they've struggled to find motivation for the games against the bad teams. Like, they played pretty well against Colorado last week when they lost. They then proceeded to play pretty poorly against teams like Detroit, San Jose, Columbus. This has been a thing historically, too, where the Rangers have always played down to their opposition because of the types of styles less talented teams typically play. And they got to find a consistency that's going to work for them in those kinds of low-event games where, okay, if we're going to only have 30 scoring chances, 40 scoring chances the whole game, we got to get 7 or 8 of them to be pretty good looks if we want to have a chance to win this game. And right now, they're not really getting that. Valiket's analytics, he tweeted his today from yesterday's game. He had the Rangers with only, I think, 2 high danger chances in the game from Detroit yesterday. I think Natural Stat Trick had them at 4, so not particularly dangerous. And Detroit's not exactly a stellar defensive team. So there are clearly things to improve upon here. Anything you want to get in on these last 3 games before we do Stars of the Week and we talk about the Bruins signing Mitchell Miller?
Carter Hart's really good. Yes. Carter Hart is good. I don't know if this will last, considering I'm kind of like still feeling it out, considering how poorly he's played last season, and I'm kind of hesitant to say he's back, but so far he's looked really, really good, and the Rangers are kind of lucky to have won that game, but Carter Hart's really good, man.
He's been the best goalie in the league to start the year. When you look at the underlying stuff, most of the websites have him first. If Ottinger comes back, maybe we get an interesting race there between those two. But right now, Carter Hart's definitely, and he's doing it on a god-awful team, which makes it all the more impressive.
He's the reason the Flyers have wins.
Yes.
That's it. That's the tweet. Carter Hart is doing his best Henrik Lundqvist impression of, I have a terrible team in front of me, but I will play so well that my team is going to win anyway. He's doing his best Hank impression, and to this point, he's done a very good job of it.
Yeah. All right, let's do 3 stars, and then we can talk a little more seriously. So, 3 stars of the week. We both have Kakko, and then I will let you have the floor.
Yeah, well, Kaapo Kakko has looked amazing. And I think he was one of, if not the best Ranger on the ice last night. The points aren't there, but if you just put away the score sheet for a second and you just watch him play, he is dominating whenever he's on the ice. He's much more confident with the puck as opposed to before, last season and before that. He is a lot stronger. He can bully people off the puck. Like, he's he's turning into a really solid kind of power forward type where he will just pummel his way into any part of the ice that he wants, whether you like it or not. And he will get good scoring opportunities, and he will get to the dirty areas. And Capo Caco has been playing very well. He might not have the exorbitant points that we want to see out of him yet, but the if he continues to play the way he's been playing, he's going to get there. Same way with Alexis Lafreniere. He's also played much better offensively, and his defense still needs a little bit of work, but overall, I'm more hopeful on Lafreniere right now than some other players that haven't picked up the pace offensively. I think for him too, the points will come, and that goes to Nils Lundqvist, man. Like if the Rangers just didn't give up on him and trade him away, he'd be playing instead of Hayek right now, and I would assume, hope, maybe think that he could do more offensively at least than Libor Hayek can. So, and the Rangers really need somebody like that because Jacob Trouba isn't doing any of that. So it's all up to Adam Fox, and end of sentence right now for the Rangers offensively from offense from the blue line. And Nils Lundqvist would help with that. So he gets my 3rd star.
That's my rebuttal to every single stupid person who says, well, Nils would only be helpful on the power play. Trouba doesn't help the second power play.
No.
Trouba is a turnover waiting to happen on that second power play. So that's my rebuttal to that. So my 3, Kako, the decisiveness is the biggest thing. The first 3 years in the league, very tentative, always deferring to his line mates, just trying not to make a mistake. Now he's pushing the game and controlling the game every time he's on the ice. You're seeing it now that he's getting to play with better players. He's got a better understanding of where he needs to be. I don't know if you saw that quote or not the other day where he said, Chris and Mika always hug after they score, and I'm not really much of a hugger, but sometimes they include me, which is nice. So I was very happy to see that. Next, I have Jeff Gorton for locking the Rangers into this roster construction 2 years ago by trading and giving Trouba that extension and giving Zibanejad, setting the table where they had to decide on Zibanejad last year. This is the team. There is no changing this team. Unless you trade out somebody who's making a lot of money, there is no improving this roster. Last, elementary statistics, which tell us that eventually if the Rangers keep playing like this, they will score some goals. But until then, this is purely hypothetical.
Can't argue that. Yeah, it's just the 5-on-5 play has been better than last season. I don't want to sit here and say, okay, well, Zibanejad is doing absolutely nothing at 5-on-5 and he's a black hole and all this. That's not what I'm saying. But I would like to see him score a goal at 5-on-5 eventually.
That's reasonable.
That would be reasonable. Of all my requests up to this point, I feel that's a very reasonable thing to ask for. Your top line center scoring a goal at even strength in this economy?
All right. Last thing we got to talk about before we get out of here. The Bruins signed Mitchell Miller, the draft pick of the Arizona Coyotes from 2 years ago. On Friday afternoon, they renounced his rights today. They haven't clarified if they're buying him out or it's a mutual termination. But the big point here is that, A, the hockey men are still full of shit. They went up there and lied to everybody's faces on Friday that they did their due diligence, that they had reached out, that the agent had made sure that Miller had reached out to his victim before they agreed to this contract, which doesn't seem to be the case. And it speaks to the lack of sensitivity and just general awareness that these organizations have. And importantly, it speaks to the power of collectivism, because from everything I've gathered, Bruin fans basically would not stop calling the ticket offices and their ticket reps over the weekend to try and get either answers, threaten to cancel their tickets. And that's why part of the reason why Andrew and I are the way we are when it comes to collectivism and just voicing our opinion when things are bad. If enough people complain about something simultaneously, you can cause change that you would like to see in sports. It seems very difficult to do, and this is an extreme outlier. Not every team is signing a teenager who was convicted of a hate crime when they were in middle school. This is an extreme outlier situation, but don't ever feel hopeless when your team does something bad. You galvanize enough people, you can get the change you would like to see.
I like the people that defend him because their arguments are so like based in fantasy. Like I want to live in this fantasy land that some of these people live in, because it's so baffling to me how people can sit here with a straight face like adults being like, oh, well, you didn't do anything wrong when you were 14 years old. It's like, dude, I don't know what you did when you were 14, but I wasn't going around committing hate crimes. I wasn't out here doing hate crimes and then also blatantly not being sorry for them when I was 14. Like, it's not as if like this dude stole a bag of chips when he was 14 from like a grocery store, and we're saying that he's he's never allowed in the NHL because of it. Like, that's not what we're saying. These are two completely different things. As you hear an ambulance outside my house because I live right by a hospital, and they will just never. Yeah, they're very loud. But when we talk about Mitchell Miller, it's very important to remember that he didn't just, as I said, steal a bag of chips, or he didn't do something that was silly back in the day, and we're making a bigger deal out of it than it needs to be. This man continuously committed hate crimes. And not only did he commit them, he was not apologetic about them. He was very set on just kind of coasting on admitting that he did it, and then that was the end of that. Like, he was very I don't know what goes through Mitchell Miller's mind. And I don't know. I know he like tried to reach out and apologize last week on Instagram. It just all feels very slimy. It all feels like something that the Boston Bruins tried to kind of slide under the rug and hoping that nobody would notice and it would all go okay and they would fix Mitchell Miller and that they would do all these things. But hockey fans are smart. Like, you can't just do that and expect hockey fans to be okay with it. This is, again, like, he didn't do some like really minor, stupid, silly thing and hockey fans are blowing this up. This man did really heinous things when he was 14, and he hasn't learned from them, hasn't apologized, hasn't done anything to show to mostly anybody that he's changed. So defending him, I think, is the most asinine thing you could do. And for the Boston Bruins, we did our due diligence. Oh, we did everything. Blah, 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 blah. Whenever for the until the end of time, whenever any NHL organization says we did our due diligence, they are full of blank. They're full of it. They are absolutely full of it because the Boston Bruins, supposedly, their original six team, like they are a team that is rooted in this historical aspect of how they do things the right way and yada yada and whatever. Where? Because in the most egregious example of things that you needed to do due diligence on, you absolutely unequivocally failed. And the team hated it. The team hated it when the reporters talked to Patrice Bergeron. He hated it. Nick Foligno hated it. The whole roster hated it. Everybody was totally against it. So the Bruins didn't speak to the team of the victim's family. The team didn't speak to the victim's family. They spoke to nobody. They just tried to slide it under the rug and expect everybody to be okay with it. Let me tell you something. Bruins fans and hockey fans are not okay with it.
No, absolutely not. And I'm very glad that we were able to collectively shame them into doing the right thing, even though it took collective shaming for them to do the right thing, as opposed to just philosophically believing in doing the right thing. And that's the thing. The Bruins have had a documented history of not drafting well, of especially drafting defensemen particularly well. They thought they could get this depreciated asset because he has a track record of hate crimes. And that would be enough for them to say, we can fix him. This won't be an issue. He can live with somebody in the organization. We'll babysit him. Like Don Sweeney said, I picked him up from the airport and I'm the one who brought him here. Well, I hope you brought him back to the airport, Don, because this is your fault.
Yeah. And I like that Cam Neely was like, oh, well, I don't know how this happened. It's the meme of like, we're trying to figure out the person that did this kind of thing. It's like, you're the president of hockey ops. If you didn't approve it, then how did this happen? How did he get signed?
We know what happened. They asked the agent, did he do X, Y, and Z? The agent lied, and we are where we are right now. It speaks to the inherent power structures within hockey of you have a working relationship with somebody already. You take them at their word for it, assuming they're going to give you the honest truth because you have worked with a person before. until these people in power start questioning their decision making a little bit more, you're going to keep getting embarrassing things like that. The last thing I'll say on this before we take care of housekeeping, get everybody out of here. 2-3 years, even when the Coyotes drafted him, I remember reading in The Athletic saying that most teams took him off their draft board altogether. They weren't considering to draft him at all. The few teams that met with him all said that he showed absolutely no contrition or remorse or regret for what he did, that he felt it was an inconvenience for him as opposed to, something he needed to atone for and make up for. That's not somebody who deserves to play in the NHL, period. And that's not to say someone doesn't have to figure out what to do with the rest of their life, which is another defense that you're seeing of him. Well, what's he supposed to do? Go get a job, learn a trade. You don't get to deserve to play hockey if you're going to do shit like that. It is a privilege to play in the NHL. There are 32 teams in this league, 22, 23 roster spots on each team. This is the best league in the world. These are the best players in the world. If you haven't met the standard, the very low standard for playing in the NHL, you don't get to be an exception. There are god-awful people in this league who have been charged with heinous shit, who have gotten away with it. And even the NHL said, you are too bad to be here.
That's pretty much all I got to say about that, because there's only it's an egregious thing that never should have happened. And the Boston Bruins doing it anyway is a complete and utter failure on the organization and on the broader aspect of the NHL, of how did this happen? And it happens, and it will happen again. And that's the sad part, is the NHL will learn nothing from this, and that eventually at some point this will happen again.
And so you lost the moral high ground to Gary Bettman. It's time to pack it up. It's really time to pack it up, Cam Neely. That's the man who went to Canadian Parliament and said CETE doesn't cause concussions. When you lose the moral high ground to Gary Bettman, you're cooked. All right, that'll do it for this week's episode. The show will be up on YouTube. It's streaming Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube every Monday, 6:15, somewhere in that window. All your favorite podcasting platforms, please leave us a 5-star review. Reviews are very nice to see when we put in the work we do. That's Andrew Chelney. His Twitter is Chelney Andrew, CHELNEY. My Twitter is my name, Nick Zararis, CARARIS. I hope Twitter still works by next week. We're going to see what happens by next week.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys then.
Later.